Hi, I'm John of John's Carnivorous Plants, and this is my indoor nursery. Today we are going to talk about humidity and airflow. And man, does this place need some airflow. I was at 72 when I began filming, and now it's all the way up to 80. At any rate, uh, what's going on today is that we're talking about humidity, airflow for carnivorous plants, and what that means for you, your collection, and in general, what you should be doing. So, humidity is a rather touchy topic in the carnivorous plant space in that most problems relate to humidity, but people don't understand how humidity is related to those problems. And my best case in point is something you won't see in a book are the humidity fluctuations that I experience up here in Northeast Ohio. To where in the winter, my humidity drops down to virtually none. And then in the summer, I'm practically, drinking the air. So the very rapid shift between those two has allowed me to see what it's like at a low humidity environment versus what it's like at a high humidity environment, what challenges you face on both ends of the spectrum. Granted, there's some temperature related things also in play there because humidity is affected by temperature. The hotter air is, the more water it can hold. The colder it is, less water it can hold. So you might be at 100% at 40 degrees, and it's different. There's more water in the air at 70 degrees at 100%, even though it's still 100% humidity. So you have to keep that in perspective. With that in mind, what people experience as a humidity issue is generally the plants are transpiring. So their cells or their leaves or whatever are releasing water at a much faster rate than they naturally are used to. Because most of these plants are growing in bogs, whenever there is a massive amount of osmotic pressure going on with the air, generally speaking, it's going to act like a straw almost, in that it's pulling from around the plant as well as the plant equally. Unfortunately, in our houses, on a windowsill, or in a small little area, even if you have a small saucer underneath it, it's not comparable to a bog. It's not comparable, in any way, shape, or form, just to be kind of blunt, because you don't have the same amount of moisture present. There's not as much to act as that siphon to actually get that effect going through the medium as profoundly as you would see in the bog. And because of that, the plants are more sensitive to temperature related humidity shifts. So, and it's even an issue whenever I'm shipping plants. Plants I ship to certain areas of the country have more of a shock than they do in other places. And it has a lot to do with the changing of temperature, elevation, and humidity. And why? It's because elevation and temperature are affecting on how humidity affects the plants. So even though people have very similar conditions to me, just because their elevation is different, they're going to have different levels of humidity issues. And now whenever I'm talking about humidity issues, how fast mold will grow, how much, how often you'll have an anaerobic environment form just because there's not enough actual evaporation occurring out of your trays. There's a multitude of various issues that can be traced down to humidity as its cause. And then what's even funnier is that there's a relationship with humidity and then airflow that I don't think people really miss. Well, that I think a lot of people miss. Excuse me. Sorry. Airflow affects your plants in a very profound way. It allows them to perform better gas exchange, which even in cloning things like this, I'll open the vents at least once a day for one day out of the week, let them actually get a little bit of exchange, and then continue on. The reason for this is that pretty much if you've ever been in a stagnant room where you feel like the air is stale, it's pretty much a similar situation for these plants. If you keep them enclosed, things get stagnant. So you have a cabinet, or you have a humidity wrap over, I know some people they get a plastic wrap that goes over top their racks to hold in the humidity. You're going to run into a problem where if there is no good air intake and good air exhaust, that the air gets stale, quote unquote. And whenever that happens, you'll notice that there is a higher rate of fungal growth. There's a slower rate of growth of the plants themselves. It's just, you'll see a lot of weird growth too if there's not enough airflow. And it's not very noticeable in a small collection, but like, for example, in here, I could see it very well in that, like, certain trays that I have more well covered than others, there's definitely a difference. Even though like they could be comparably on the same rack under the same light, same temperature, etc., there is comparably a difference in the growth rate. Because of that, it's very hard for anyone to realistically suggest what's going on, like with your humidity or your airflow, and you're going to have to feel it out yourself. It takes a lot of time and a lot of experience to dial it in, and I know that's not the answer anyone watching this video is probably looking for, but it's the honest truth that I have to give you. There's a fine line in that, like, for example, for me in here, I have several box fans that whenever I'm not recording are going, and it's super loud, but it's because I need to keep the airflow of the entire space moving, as opposed to just like the little, I used to have like little tiny desk fans blowing on my plants and stuff on the racks. And it's just, as I've grown, it's not feasible anymore. But then it's like, it's funny because people will see my setup, be like, oh yeah, I could just get the racks, there's no problem. They don't see the other parts of the infrastructure that are going on around it. And like, for example, another issue I have in the summer is I have a dehumidifier that I end up running 24/7. And oh my goodness, I'm constantly dumping the water out of it because as it heats up, more water gets in the air, more likely to start seeing mold issues or fungus start popping up. And it's very difficult to keep everything in a golden range. Now, whenever people ask me, what is a good range for humidity? It's right around 60 to 80%. And now I say that range very wide because it depends on time of year. If you're in summer, be closer to 60. If you're in winter, be closer to 80. And the reason for that is the difference of how much water is in the air and how it will affect the plants. And if you're lucky enough to be in an area where it's more tropical, or you're farther south, well, pretty much almost everyone else in the US is farther south, but if you're farther south than me in the US, you're going to be finding that maintaining your humidity closer to like 60, 70 is a much more ideal. Whereas up here in north, we want to go a little bit higher in the winter just because, frankly, it gets too cold, and we're combating all of the outside air outside of the house, which I know it's hard for people to really conceptualize, but like your air in your home and your apartment or wherever you're at is cycling, and there's vents and ducting and whatnot that exchange it with the outside world. Even if it goes through a heater, the heater, generally speaking, is not, drastically changing the humidity, if that makes any sense. If anything, in most cases, it's drying it out. And then, yeah, it really also even depends on what kind of heat you have going on too. So there's all kinds of variables to the equation. But essentially, it's 60 to 80%, and you'll be in a Goldilocks zone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative. I know it's kind of weird and off the cuff, but it's something. Please like, subscribe, check out my website to buy some plants from me directly, or come join my Discord and come talk to me yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to catch you on the next one.